The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus said to his disciples, "I have come to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. I have a baptism with which to be baptized, and what stress I am under until it is completed. Do you think that I have come to bring peace to the earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. From now on, 5 in one household will be divided, 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. They will all be divided. Father against son, and son against father. Mother against daughter, and daughter against mother. Mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. The Gospel of the Lord. Last week I spoke of Abraham and said he's one of the saints of the Old Testament with which I deeply connect. Today we see another one, Jeremiah. Now I promise not everybody in the Old Testament is somebody to whom with whom I deeply connect, but these two really are. I often speak about Isaiah, and I guess I know more about Isaiah. For 30 years, I taught about him in university and have a deep respect for Isaiah. But Jeremiah, I know more about from the heart than from the head. Jeremiah is really the reluctant prophet, one who didn't want the job in the first place, but was called by God, tried to get out of it, and ended up doing the best he could, and figuring it wasn't very good, and dying a total failure, at least in his own mind. The time was in the years leading up to the 6th century BC. In the year 598 BC, the armies of Babylon came in and rather quickly attacked the city of Jerusalem. They carried off the king and about 10,000 of the more educated and more skilled portion of the population, more or less just of the city of Jerusalem. But somebody they did not carry off was the prophet Jeremiah. They knew of him. Actually, they kind of liked him because Jeremiah had been trying to warn the people that if they did not turn back in faithfulness to God, a great disaster was going to come. And so they basically saw Jeremiah as kind of, hey, he's pro-Babylonia. He's warning the people about us. And so they left him there. And for the next 12 years, until they returned and destroyed the city, Jeremiah continued to try to warn the people not only of the city of Jerusalem, those who were left, but through messengers, emissaries, kind of secret messengers, tried to warn the community of Judeans who had been captured and already taken to Babylonia. And it's because of that we have this episode today. The officials saying to the king, this man should be put to death. He's discouraging the soldiers who are left in this city and the people by speaking such words to him. So they found him to be almost an enemy of the state. And King Zedekiah, who was a very weak king, he had been placed on the throne as kind of a puppet king 12 years earlier by the Babylonians, although he was from the royal family. They didn't take the strongest person they could put there, but the weakest. He said, I'm powerless against you. Do whatever you have to do with him. And so they take and they throw him into a cistern in the city of Jerusalem, lowering him down by ropes into the mud. No way to get out. Now, he wouldn't drown there because the cistern was dry. It was a time of drought. However, he would starve there. And who was it who decided to fight for him? It was an officer of the king's house, Ebed-Melech, the Ethiopian. It was a foreigner who decided to intervene on behalf of one whom at least he and certainly others recognized as a prophet of God. My Lord King, these men have acted wickedly in all that they did to the prophet Jeremiah. And note that he calls him the prophet. The others simply this man, but the prophet Jeremiah, by throwing him into the cistern to die of hunger, for there's no bread left in the city. Others were going hungry as well. And then, a switcheroo, the king commanded Ebed-Melech, the Ethiopian, take 3 men with you from here and pull him up before he dies. And the passage stops there, but if you keep on reading, he says, but don't tell anyone what you've done or who authorized you to do it. They obviously saved the prophet. And it wasn't long after that that the armies of Babylon came back. And Jeremiah, not wanting to leave his people, wanting to go into exile with them, against his will, was carried off by some of his supporters to Egypt. We don't know where he died or when he died. And it would seem that at least in his own mind, he was a great failure. God called him, obviously made a mistake, and nobody listened to him. And yet, today, some 2,600 or so years later, he is universally recognized as one of the greatest prophets that God called. A reluctant prophet nonetheless, but one of the greatest, one who remained faithful, not just in great success, but in great failure, and never abandoned the call that God had given to him.